Let's talk about WhiteNoise. I've configured it on a different app, so this will be something that we can pull pretty heavily from the Homeschool app. But WhiteNoise is a way to serve static files in a fairly efficient way that is part of the Python web application. And without getting into the details of how it works, we can just basically trust that that this will do what we needed to do. Yeah, John, that's the hilarious part. Everything was working on Saturday. I had this nice little counter. It was showing me how many people were there. I'm gonna hit the little AMA button again. I made an Ask Me Anything button, which is that first comment that I led with. None of that's working. When I press the little marker button, I get a little hazard warning instead of a green check, which means that's not working. I don't know. I'm not sure why technology is fighting against me here, but that seems to be the case. So we're gonna get WhiteNoise. We're going to add it and make sure that it works for us on deployment. The thing that we want to, how will we validate this? So we can probably do some kind of basic, I think we have a basic index page right now, and maybe we can make that render to a template and then show just some image of some kind that can perhaps map to something that comes from the admin. And the whole point is just to see something. Because I want to be able to validate this in production. That's the big thing, because I can't jump over to the admin on stream. So we're going to configure that, and then I do remember that static file storages tends to fight with my testing setup. So we'll want to, when we're doing local development, not use WhiteNoise, and that's fine. So all of these pieces we'll configure. We'll watch out for any gotchas. So WhiteNoise, just the idea behind it, and the idea behind the name WhiteNoise is static, is another name for static. So it's all about serving your static files and giving the locations for where to serve them. I don't remember there being much here. Yeah, okay. Let's just do it. Let's get WhiteNoise going from PyPI. And find the right version. WhiteNoise 6.6.0. Okie dokie. So we want to go to our requirements file, go to the bottom and say WhiteNoise, and this is 6.6.0. And then we're going to come over here and do our pip compile command to make sure that WhiteNoise gets installed. So now we have WhiteNoise as part of the requirements txt, and from that we can do, oh boogers, where's this, is it C flags? Yeah. I've got some C dependencies, so I've got this crazy command to actually get my packages up, but if you look at it carefully, ignore all this garbage at the beginning, but really the core of it is a pip install of the requirements files at the end here. So John, the way, so that's a good question. The question, and because I've noticed the chat replays are not coming back. So the question is, am I hosting static files on Heroku or a cloud like Amazon S3 or something like that? And the answer is I'm hosting it on Heroku itself. So the idea behind static files, or sorry, WhiteNoise in particular, is that it will combine the static files and put them in the specified location. And that will all get then bundled together with the application as part of the deployment. Normally, I think what Django, normally, I know that's too strong a word. Django has some options for what it recommends for static file hosting. One of them is a file system version of that, where you might do a collect static management command, and it will dump the files out to a directory. Then you can have something sitting in front of Django like Nginx, which can then serve the static file. So that's one common way. Another way is used to like a recommendation that John's making here, or a method that John is mentioning here is taking those files and uploading them to S3. And then anytime you have a static files reference, you can actually point to an S3 bucket and host files there. But this way is putting the static files into the packaging, the bundle that gets uploaded to Heroku, And the static files are actually served as an endpoint by WhiteNoise. WhiteNoise will handle anything in the static path. And that's what's cool about it. It's not quite as optimal, well, probably not by a long shot compared to something like Nginx, but that having an Nginx is actually a more complicated setup for Heroku, because Heroku has its own load balancer in front of things. So I don't know that we really talked much about load balancers, but yeah, so when you have this diagram is only accurate to a degree. I mean, many degrees. But this path right here, there's the internet to Heroku. This is pretty much, it's not a lie, but there's a lot more happening in this arrow that I'm letting on. So the internet will, the SendGrid request in this case will come into the internet to Heroku's IP addresses, and Heroku will actually know that, oh, this is for Journey Inbox. I need to have, there's a routing layer that will actually route to my dyno, which is the name for the compute power that's powering the web app instance here. And so that routing is Heroku's load balancer that they set in front of things. If you're running your system on your own, you might have your own load balancer, and you could use something like Nginx instead as the entry point for all of your system, and you can have multiple things that you point to, and that's another way to go about it. But Heroku would not like that setup, to have a single dyno be running a process that you can't. If you could imagine, like right here where I have the cursor, if you had an Nginx proxy sitting here, it's not really that doable. I'm sure there's probably some way to do it if you get really clever with your Heroku configuration of having multiple pieces, like if you did some kind of Docker setup, but it's not how it's designed. So because it's pretty much a straight shot from the Heroku router to gUnicorn, WhiteNoise kind of sits inside of here, serving your static files as a subsystem, and it does it fairly efficiently by using some Linux system calls, but it still does have to go through some amount of Python processing in order to do that. So there's definitely a performance penalty there. Alexandru, yeah, of EPS. That is like the way of things if you're not going with a platform as a service solution. Which, you know, I've gone with who does droplets? I'm drawing a blank. DigitalOcean. I was drawing a blank on that earlier. I was doing a podcast recording, and I couldn't. I said droplet. I knew the term that they had for their individual machines, but I couldn't think of the company's name. But yeah, I've gone that route before, and it's cool. It's like you learn a ton if you do the VPS. And for those that don't know, I think that stands for virtual private servers, I believe. So it's like your own rented space basically, but it means you have to manage your operating system. You have to manage deployment in your own ways, and Heroku takes care of a lot of that for you, which is why I tend to recommend it if you're trying to get super fast and I just want to get a service out. Okay, so let's get back to the WhiteNoise bit. Hopefully that's enough context for you all. If you have any questions, let me know. And we'll look at the actual configuration we have to do here to make all of this work properly. And I don't remember, there's a couple things I don't remember here. So let's also cheat and bring up my homeschool app. And if you want to cheat and use my homeschool app, you can. I make that code available. That's on GitHub at GitHub MB Layman Homeschool. So you can draw from that. That's an application that's been live for a couple of years, and it has a lot of my personal opinions here that I share on the stream. But I borrow from that quite extensively because I put a fair amount of thought into it. So we're going to steal from it because if you have it, you should. Yeah, you're right, Alexander. Your comment is Heroku's not bad, and I agree. There are cheaper options, absolutely. The challenge for me is, or for a lot of people, is cost, especially, the unit economics from around the world. Like you might be in a place where the cost of $15 a month is a lot bigger deal than, and so 5 versus 15 might be a substantial material impact for somebody. And that's kind of the way of the world, sadly. But I'm thankfully in a place where I can say, you know what, I'm gonna shell out $15 a month rather than 5. But if that's the spot you're in, I wish you luck. So we've got this configuration guide about Django here, and we've installed WhiteNoise, but I want to make sure that we look at what I did for homeschool. So I'm going to bring this up, and we're going to go, first thing place we're going to stop is our settings file, and I think we can use the same setup here. So this is what WhiteNoise recommends, and this is what we're going to use. So let's go over our settings file, and I don't remember if I configured that or not. Static might be commented out. Nope, that's already configured. That's nice. And what else is here? We've got the static URL. Ooh, there's a difference there. Did I mess that up? Missing a slash in my static. Is there supposed to be a leading slash? Let's go check the docs. I don't want to lead y'all astray. So let's look at static. The thing we're after is static URL. What should be the format of that? Should it include a leading slash or not? Static URL. Okay, so their example says static with no slash, which I think is what I did on Journey Inbox. So I don't know. I guess maybe it doesn't matter, but it surprised me. Must normalize that. I'm following their directions here. All right. The other thing that we want, or are going to want, is an actual this line here, static files DIRs. So what static files DIRs does is when you run a well, how do I describe this? There's an operation that is intended to happen that I think Heroku does automatically for us, which is why we're probably not going to find it in the homeschool app, I bet. Now we'll collect static. Okay. So when Heroku is doing its build process to actually build this, it will detect that it's a Django app, and because it's a Django app, and because it knows to gather static files, it will run this management command called collect static. And collect static will scan through every one of your Django apps. I mean, it doesn't have to. There's some configuration settings, but the default way is to scan through each Django app that you have and look for a directory named static. And if it has encounters a static directory, it's going to pull that together and pull it all into a single directory. So all of your static files, which is like your images, any JavaScript or CSS files you might want to include, any stuff like that, is intended to go in the static directory. And the static because it doesn't change. That's the idea behind it. And the reason for pulling it together into a single place is so that when those files are served at runtime to your users, that is the operation, the lookup is as fast as possible because it's like a single directory. It maps kind of cleanly to the web. So if you have a /static URL, then every part of that could be just, you could look into that particular directory and match the path and see if the file is there or not. And if the file is there, you serve it. If it's not there, you get them a 404. If you didn't have this mechanism of collecting files into a single place, then the process of looking for a file to serve as a static file means you have to look through each application, check out each static directory, and potentially even more. So this static files DIRs option here is a way to specify any extra directories that you want to add to that compilation step. Oh, thank you, Alexander. Appreciate that. You can give a thumbs up on the video too. That would be super helpful. So we've got multiple sources of static files here. And we want to enable the static files DIRs option because eventually we'll have some to display. I don't know that we have any yet, and I don't think it'll blow up on us if we leave that there. I think it'll be fine, but let's try it out. So we can run the management command and run collect static. Cool, thank you. And there's a way to like have it skip this warning. This is what we're gonna run up against. So and this is a good warning. I appreciate this. So we had this static file setting, but it's saying static doesn't exist. So it's trying to save us, which is probably why I had it commented out. Like I have some checks that will not let things deploy or pass until static files are there. So maybe we're still not ready for it because there's no content that I want to put in there today. All right, let's keep it off. We don't strictly need it for WhiteNoise, but I'm going to put like a to-do in here. Well, that's a terrible place to put that. Let's just make sure there's an issue. Yeah, I don't see an issue. So we'll create a quick little one here. So enable static files dirs, or else you're gonna have a bad time later. All right. So we'll leave that off. We won't put a comment in here because I'm not going to notice any comment. So we should still have WhiteNoise. We'll cancel this. And now by running manage collect static, we shouldn't get that warning anymore. We'll still get the prompt of do you want to replace these files? And you can see, so it dumped these out to the static files directory. And that's the directory that Heroku is going to look for, or default to build to. And we've got this specified as static root, so we've got the site configured to read from that directory. If we do like a tree on static files, we'll see everything that got pulled in. So there's some stuff from Django extensions. There's some stuff from the admin site. This is all the stuff that I'm not currently getting on my site because we weren't running with WhiteNoise and there was no actual serving of those files. So in the absence of WhiteNoise, there are ways to serve a static entry point, but we didn't have that configured in our URL. So it's going to be, we look here, we had this static path, but this thing only works for a debug mode. If you aren't doing debug, I think this thing doesn't work at all because, well, evidenced by the fact that I didn't see anything when I was checking out my admin page. Okay. So there are probably a couple things we want to fix. This is actually one of them because I know that we don't want to enable that. We want WhiteNoise to be the thing that's serving static files. We got to pay attention to that too. The Counselor 7, thanks for joining in. Wow, 3:38 a.m. That's dedication. Appreciate you being here, and thank you for the comment. So we've got, let's go to the guide that we have for WhiteNoise. We now have static files configured that was already configured. That's nice. And we'll get to this in a minute. So we'll have a template here that we can use as the basis of testing this out, but we're not ready for that yet. Let's do the middleware. And now they have a note here that says, it should be placed directly after the security middleware. All right, let's chat about why. Remember earlier I said that the downside of serving static files with WhiteNoise is that you have to go through some Python code. And the reason that they recommend putting this here is you want to go through as little Python code as possible for a static file. Because remember, it's static. So presumably, if it's just a static file that's trying to be serving out some image content or whatever, then there's nothing to really, there's not a lot of reason to run any extra Python code. That's mostly like wasted effort because it's not going to be in the response going back. So you do want to have the security middleware in front to make sure that you have a safeguard. So like if you're getting, there's some controls in here. So if you're getting HTTP requests, you actually want to do the redirects to HTTPS. That can be done by the security middleware. But immediately following that, you want to have that static check so that as soon as it can detect that it's a static file path, it can abort all the rest of the process and give you the file directly. So that's why they want it as high in that middleware stack as possible. Because if you're not familiar with the middleware, it's kind of like an onion layer. So a request comes in and eventually gets the view is in the center. So it's going through all these middlewares and then it will eventually go out all the same set of middlewares at the bottom. So you can view this as the order in which these things execute as well. and then you can have the in like the view code would be here, in that terms of layering. Okay, so let's put WhiteNoise up there, and we want to have we need to specify the storage. Oh, I think I also installed the wrong thing, because yeah, I'm pretty positive I did. Let's go to the requirements file. Yep. Okay, let's fix what we installed. Sorry, y'all. Didn't think about this until it was too late. Oh, one step forward, two steps back. My bad. So not only does static file WhiteNoise serve our static files, it has the ability to do. We want to do that efficiently. Like we don't want to serve. If you have a big JavaScript file, text is a very good thing to compress. It will compress extremely well using gzip, and that's the default. But there are better compression schemes available on the web, and one of them is called Brotli. That gives you probably, I don't remember if it's something like 10 to 20% performance boost in terms of serving those static files. So, but that's not installed by default with WhiteNoise. So by adding this additional bracket syntax here and saying Brotli, it's a thing. Drawing a blank on what these things are called in the Python packaging land, but there's a way of specifying additional packages that you want to add in, and this is the way to do that. That's for Brotli. So let's go back to our requirements, our pip compile thing, and run it again. And it's probably going to install 2 packages this time. Yeah, now we've got not only WhiteNoise but also Brotli, so that when the compile static command runs, it's going to create gzip files, because not everything on the web can serve Brotli. So when it's going to request content, it's going to say like, here's the compression scheme that I can support, or compression and decompression. Because if it doesn't know how to serve Brotli and is given a Brotli file, it can't decompress it and can't show the content. So it'll have gzip as a fallback, because virtually everything on the internet works with gzip. And then Brotli will be there optionally for the browsers that support it, which is Chrome and Firefox, and I'm sure others, but at least the big couple ones out there that are still in their own engine, both support Brotli. Okay, so now we need to reinstall our packages. That's the C flags thing. This should get Brotli installed, and now we're back in business. All right. So the other bit that it says we need, right, is the static, what was it? Static files storages. Static files storage, excuse me. This thing. This is a Django setting. So Django is configurable in many different places. And the storage system is one of them. And this tells us to use that. And here's us using it in the homeschool app. So we're going to do the same thing down here. We'll use compress manifest static file storage. Now, one of the differences, though, in homeschool is that I have this in 2 places. When I'm running tests, now I don't know if we actually need to do this. I might leave it out because we're not using TZ detect right now. Let's just take it for now. I think we're going to need it later, and I'd rather have my tests use basic storage and not be running WhiteNoise. So in our test settings, we're going to go in here and include, we're essentially overwriting it. When you say older systems, are you talking about Brotli there, John? So when we run tests, it's going to use the default static file storage. Bello, welcome. Good to see you again. Glad you're able to join in. We're working on integrating WhiteNoise for hosting static files this evening. So I think we have enough configuration at this point to actually make sure the tests run. Make sure that we didn't do anything wacky. Whoops. Static file storage setting is deprecated. Well. Oh yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not paying attention. My bad. Am I using that other? Okay, I guess I'm gonna have to correct homeschool when I go back and when upgrade it. I thought. Did I, or do I have this twice? Storages? No. Okay. I just flat out am not up to date on this. Storages? Wow. Fun. New thing. Just a different way to specify the same things. I guess it gives optionality when it comes to more configuration. And this is, you can see it right here with the databases, and we have the same kind of thing with templates and stuff. They use a dictionary, so it's probably trying to correct something that was not adhering to the standard patterns. So here we've got essentially saying the same thing, I think. And I don't know what other settings we would need for now. I think that's it. But I do want to take this and put this. I'm going to correct all this garbage that I just created for myself. Okay. All right. So now we have the basic static file storage for our test setup and the compressed manifest file storage from WhiteNoise for our actual running. And when we test locally, it will run with this setup, so this should be okay. And we can validate all of this before we deploy too, so that should work. All right, let's try again. Okay, seemed to run fine. Yep. We've got that going. And here's the comment on Brotli. So there's the note to install that way. We're not using a content delivery network, so I'm not worried about this section. And all right, let's read this. Actually, this one, I don't know that I've read these docs recently, so let's take a moment to actually read this, make sure that we're doing this properly. This might be new, or it might be, well, it's new to me, or new to my memory anyway. In development, Django's run server automatically takes over static file handling. In most cases, this is fine. However, this means that some of the improvements that WhiteNoise makes to static file handling won't be available in development, and opens up the possibility for differences in behavior between development and production. For this reason, it's a good idea to use WhiteNoise in development as well. All right. You can disable Django's static file handling and allow WhiteNoise to take. Oh, well, I'm not using run servers, so maybe this doesn't matter. Like I actually use gunicorn to do this. So now that I'm saying that, I feel like there was some stuff about static file detection, or that was that was a templates thing. Never mind. So I think it will work. I think this will work fine. So now we have our storage set up here. Well, actually, this is the homeschool app. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong place. We've got our storage set up. I don't think we need any of these WhiteNoise settings because this one is already taking from debug. So if it's going to auto refresh if debug is on, which it will be when we're testing locally. And again, this is one using debug, so it's using finders, which we're not going to talk too much about. Yeah, none of those look shocking. Okay. So to test it out in reality, we need to turn off debug. Okay, that was the other thing I wanted to check on. So I think we've got the configuration right in the settings, but we need to go look at the URLs and see what I'm doing differently. Here's the difference. Well, not what I expected to see. Or this is not necessary now that we have, maybe that's it. Maybe now that we have this going with WhiteNoise, we can actually kill off this. I think I might have just added this as a temporary stand-in fix because WhiteNoise was not available when we first started. So let's try and validate this by getting rid of that and getting rid of that. Might simplify configuration here. And we'll see if we still have a working local admin. Okay. What did I say the admin was when I am developing locally? What do we call that? Shoot. Admin URL path token. Okay. I'm going to just do... I'm going to cat the env file and then grep for admin so I don't get just token. Thank you both. All right, I think, so let's go see if we can get our admin site locally. This is what port? 5000, right? Wow, why is it 5001? What happened? Do I have another process running? I'm pretty sure I have not tested any of this stuff on 5001. That's weird. That's super weird. What happened there? Okay. Because the problem is now I don't know if this is going to be viewed as a whole different site, not have a password. That's the root of that. And then token admin. Hey, okay. So there's still so much of debugging output. But I think the fact that this loaded at all, if we bring up the network tab here and refresh, or you know what, we need to turn off caching. Let's disable the cache. And then try again. What? Oh, disable the cache. Oh, it was already disabled. Sorry, y'all. I'm not on my game today, it seems. Okay, so we've got clear evidence that it's pulling this base CSS file, and look at this path. It's pulling from static admin CSS, and we didn't have anything to serve that. So previously, I know for a fact that that we used to have to depend on that plus static thing. So now we get that benefit from WhiteNoise. And what we can do, actually, here's something we could do. We can, let's remove the collect static directory. Sorry, the static files directory, which is the output directory of the collect static operation that WhiteNoise is dependent upon. And let's turn debug equal off, and then run our process again. So now on that 5001 port, if we reload things, well, still is there. What happened? Did not actually, this might be one of those weird things where it didn't actually turn debug off. All right, that's not what I anticipated, so I don't trust this yet. I want to get confidence. I'm going to switch to secrets because I think I got some secrets in the env file. I'm going to turn debug mode off. One moment. Debug is set to on. I'm changing the value to off, which should set it to false inside of Django. And I'll get out of there. Bring this back. Okay, now I should just be able to run make. So, all right, got a different angry message here. And this is probably, well, it's from Django core. So let's run this again. Ooh, good fun. It didn't even boot up because of that message, I guess. All right, well, maybe I'm not going to get quite the validation I was hoping for, but oh well. So back over here, turn debug back on. And there we go. So, although it still looks broken. That's because I didn't restart stuff. So we should be able, so the static files directory is still gone, but now that we have debug on, it's not going to complain about it. And we should be able to come back here and it's loading everything fine. All right, let's do a template and let's modify the template to load a single static file from the admin site. Find a path that works, and make sure that that loads. Here's a little image, I think, right? You can inspect this thing. Oh, come on now. Inspect. Why is it not showing me anything? That is so weird. Inspect. What's going on, y'all? Firefox, you're failing. There we go. Inspect. Okay. Oh, this might not be an icon that was loaded. It's just like embedded. I was hoping this would be some image file that we could actually look at. Well, okay. Guess we could use a lot of things. I'm overthinking this. I apologize. So let's go to journal or templates. Yeah, the path is correct. I deleted them a moment ago. So what you're seeing up here is I deleted it in order to do a test. And then I turned debugging back on, and so it's fine now. It doesn't care about that. It's trying to serve them directly out of wherever it can find them. But if I was running with debug off, I'd have to run collect static to make sure it actually had them. So I think that's what's going on. What I want to do is we have our local content. So we have our core index file. It's empty right now. If we go to the views for the core, we're rendering this page. Actually, we can take out these headers now. We don't need that junk anymore. It's just junking up my logs, no doubt. So here's something we're gonna put in there, and we can say hello. It's probably gonna break a test. I bet there's some test that is depending on emptiness there, maybe. Yep. Oh. Okay, we gotta correct that. I do not want to have to require static files during testing. Bello, I don't know what hero mevd means. Oh, he removed them. I see. Yeah. Okay. My bad. I'm not reading it very well. Okay. I absolutely do not want tests to have to require static files. That's no good. Right? So I'm confused. Did I... One of the things that I suppose I could have done on the homeschool app was hold on. I'm trying to see, did I take out This eliminates the warning about a missing static files directory. Well, that sounds promising. That sounds like what we're dealing with, right? User warning. Okay. Thank you, past app and past self, not having to figure out these silly problems. Let's go to the testing settings and drop this here. Whoops. And see if that solved the problem. Okay, cool. I'm just going to trust my past self here. And I can see what's going on, but it's not worth explaining. So it doesn't, our tests don't care about the actual content of this file. That's good. I was a little afraid that it might be looking for an empty content, but it's not. So what we can do here is create a load static line. And then we want to actually invoke, we want to trigger a browser to actually load something. And what could we load? We could do, oh man, I didn't want to do all this junk, but let's do a quick HTML tag. And then we could do a head tag. Whoops. Head. My indent stuff is not auto-detecting yet, so it's trying to do way more indentation than necessary. Let's get rid of that. All right. So why is it doing that? That's a weird styling. That looks really strange. Okay, don't care. In the head, we want to have a, let's try and load a CSS file. So we've got a link. Let's try and get the base CSS, I guess. We want a link, rel equals style sheet. And then, is it source? I always forget. href. And then here's where we want to specify the static include. Static. Oh man, do they want quotes? It's been too long since I've messed with static stuff. At work, I don't do a lot of server rendered pages, so it's been actually quite a while since I've messed with templates because I've been doing this like project setup for so long and I haven't touched the homeschool app that my brain is a little rusty on static stuff. So let's do a quick search for static, and I'm sure we'll get a bunch of hits here. So we've got, okay, it is double quotes, or it's quotes around the actual thing that we want to import. And what I don't know is what's the path for the admin. If we can find that quickly, we probably can. Let's jump over to the Django site, the Django clone that I have, and do a rip grep for base.css. Okay, here it is. Admin, so we really just need this. Then close that, and we got our tag. So now, now value your comment on body. Is I missing a body? Is that what you're saying? Well, whatever. I think we're good here. So let's fire this up. Let's go back to our root page and bring up the toolbar, have the network open, and see if everything is hunky-dory. Nope. What'd I mess up? Could not parse the remainder CSS from, okay. I messed something up. Oh, I'm being dumb. There we go. Legitimately my fault. Okay. So we've got now this thing is loading the base.css page, which is good. I think this will help us to validate the deployment. So what I'm going to do, I think we're done with everything we need to do. We've tested, we've run the tests. Those are working. They're working in a non-static file setup. We've got the middleware included. We've followed the guide from WhiteNoise here. There's nothing else really left to do because we're going to serve the static files directly from our Heroku site. So all of that should be good. And there's a bunch of like little nitty-gritty things that I think we can ignore here. So let's take a quick gander at what we actually changed. We cleaned up that index thing, but otherwise didn't touch the view. We've added the middleware. We've added the storage section. We've touched the test file. Oh, we cleaned out that direct static view rendering, which was a nice little cleanup. And then we've got our additions of WhiteNoise and our little test index file. Okay. So let's commit that. Oh man, rough is so fast. I can't even see pre-commit anymore, or barely notice it. Thank you, John. And that's not the one we want to fix. We just did 47. Add WhiteNoise. Fixes number 47. So the interesting part about this was actually, so I was on, like I said, I was on a podcast earlier this week. It's a Django chat. It's going to come out in a couple of weeks. And we were talking about going through this kind of setup stuff. Like it's taking me, I'm walking you all through it, and it's kind of fun to do it, setting up these things to get some base understanding of setting up Django sites. But sort of the question was, do we need to do this every time? Like when does a template come into mind that is actually configured all of this? And I'm not in a consultancy, so I don't have something that I just reach for. But this is now probably the third time that I've kind of set up some of these things. So I think if I do a fourth app in the future, we're gonna have to go like hardcore mode, where we start by setting up a template and then have it like render into the thing that we actually want to produce. And that way, if I do a fifth project or a sixth project, I can just start from that, and it would have the benefit of giving some opinions out there, or baking in my opinions about the web or Django sites into something that people can reference. Yeah, Merry Christmas to you. Happy early Christmas to you as well, John. Or season's greetings to people that don't celebrate Christmas. To each their own. Okay, so we've got this. I think we're ready to deploy. See if it goes well. Make deploy. This will be nice. My prompt tomorrow will include the word ago, so I'll have a more pleasant experience there. Then once we validate, then we can move on to another item here in the list. Yeah, Bella, last week I think it was last week, I switched to using Rough, and it got rid of a boatload of tools. It was really, I mean, didn't get rid of it. It got rid of, yeah, it got rid of the tools, but it kept the checks because Rough is pretty exhaustive in all the things that it does. So it was a pretty nice simplification, and it's faster. And I got to clean up like a bunch of configuration files. It was really cool. One thing I'll be able to highlight in here as this goes along somewhere, I think I think Heroku does list this at some point, is it will say running collect static, or at least it used to. Might be after the package installs. Yeah, here it is. So as part of detecting that this was a Django app, it knew to run the collect static command and builds those 130 files to build the slug, which is the Heroku's weird term for a package. All right, we're deployed. Let's go check it out. I think it's time to get this up and go to just journeyinbox.com. Should load everything. Cool. So we've got actually, this is an interesting time to comment on this. In our local testing, we saw base.css, and that's because we were in debug mode. And one of the things that WhiteNoise does is it fingerprints all of the files. And this is so it can do long-term caching of those files. And because the server side is doing template rendering, when it does that call to base.css, there's a manifest that's generated. So how does this process roughly works like this? The CSS file of base.css has you can run it through a hash function like an MD5, and you'll get a value there, and that value can be embedded into a file name, and then from that point forward you can think of that file name as unique to the content of base.css with whatever bytes were in that file. So that idea is known as fingerprinting. Once you've fingerprinted a file, this has advantages for optimization. By fingerprinting the file, that can be the URL that you actually send out over on the internet, because the user's browser, if you don't ever change that base.css file, then every time the page loads, if the content is the same, the fingerprint will still be the same. So you can tell what WhiteNoise will do is we'll add, and you can probably see it here, there should be some cache headers on here that say, yeah, a max age of, this is a number of seconds. I believe it's for a year, basically. So that's essentially the longest caching that the browser will do. And it's a signaling to the browser of, you're never going to need to come back to get this thing again. You've already got it, just use it. Now, the fingerprint gives you that advantage of, okay, now I want to change, and I wanted to add one line to base CSS. It's a different set of bytes, and when you run it through a hash function, it's going to generate a different short identifier. So the name would be, instead of 6497 blah, 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 it should be some other identifier. And the browser will detect that it's changed, it's a different path, and we'll have to get that. So, and then we'll cache that thing. So you'll have like two versions. This is a way to optimize the heck out of this, and this is actually one of the most powerful techniques that you would want out of something like WhiteNoise, because if you didn't do this, then every time somebody's coming to your site, there's no caching on those files, and you're going to get a lot of static files requests. So if you didn't recognize what this little number stuff was for, the thing to file away in your brain is fingerprinting, and know that it is a performance optimization. I think the really cool thing here for us, though, is we have confirmation that we got the base CSS file. And then I'd show you the admin, but again, I can't really, because without giving away the path to the admin, I'd have to go correct that token, which would be annoying. But we're good to go there.